you're styling it here. You can also do combinations where you can change the font family. I can give it a border as well. So give it a border and say 2EM. And that hasn't worked. Let's just look that up. This is something that you have to get used to. You have to keep looking stuff up, and eventually you'll start to learn things off by heart. But most of the time, people are looking stuff up. So let's do border CSS. So if you see W3 schools, that's good. Border style. And if we put in there dashed, and then we go back to here, it's given it a border. So if I do save, you can see it's given this whole line here a border. So I don't know if I really want to do that. Can we change the size of that border perhaps? So we can have here solid. And then here we have border width, like so. Let's try that. Width, and it's got 5 pixels there. A pixel, that's kind of like an old way of looking at things. You know, there is this new way of doing things. So you could have like 2EM. So 2EM, that's really quite thick. What it's doing is it's saying it's take the height of, like, you know, the M or a T or uppercase letter and double it. Right? So if I did 1EM, then I can put it down to that sort of size. If I do 3 pixels, now this is very close here. So what if we do some padding? Pixel. Now you can see where the padding is, and it's showing you where the padding would be as well. So if we save that, move over to here and do reload, now you can see that it's separated it. So you have this, it's what's called the box model, where you have the border and you have this padding as well. There's also a margin too. So, you know, you can mess around with this by going to this site and, you know, looking up, look up the different types of things that you can use. Like, you know, there's line, there's float, there's position, there's drop downs, there's all sorts of things that you can use, all sorts of code that you can use to create your masterpiece, if you like. But this is just, I just want to give you the basic understanding of it so that you can like have a look. I mean, here it, look, a box model. This is box model. This is what I was talking about. So you have the margin, a border, padding. So padding's on the inside. Padding is padding between the content and the border. And the margin is, you could think of that as being padding between the border and whatever is outside. Right, so what I wanted to show you was if I go to, if I decide I want to, no, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is, let's say I want to do a div tag. So I'm going to put a div tag in here. So this is divider, yes, okay, and I have the dividing tag, and I'm going to put some content in there. But if I pop some content in there, and I decide that I want to do another div tag with some other content, but I want them to be styled differently, how am I going to do that? How am I going to style these differently? Right, so what we do is we give it an ID. So let's do ID equals div1. Right, now you would give it something a little bit more meaningful than that. So, you know, example 1. So I could put like in there x1. So that gives it its ID. Now, so this ID will only be accepted by things that are in this, that are on this page. If you want something to go across like lots of different pages and lots of different div tags, then you're going to have to use something like class, or you are going to use class. So you use class, and we have the same kind of thing equals, let's call it class example, and I'm gonna rename that to ID example, so you can see that they have meaning. And then I have in here another example. Okay, so let's take a look and see what's going on here. Now you can see that these have got some styling in, because when I go to the Cascade styling sheet, P has been, and it's very kindly highlighted it for us over here, P is referring to anything that is P. You see, this is why we give it ID. So if I go to, was IDX, so if I do a hash and then do IDX, and now we're going to give it a something else. So if we do color as let's do blue. And see if this is going to work for us. this out because it's still referring to it, you see. So if I take that out, right, now you can see that this changes. Example 1 is the ID. So let's go back to example 1. Is the ID. Right. And if we want to do the class one, the class one is very similar. So we're going to use that name. This time we're going to use a dot because that's what we use when it's a class. So if it's an ID, you use a hash symbol, or if you're in America, it might be called a pound sign. But like this thing here, right? Okay. Now, if you're using a class, you're going to use a dot. We're going to put some. We're going to make that a different color so that you can see that it's a different color. And let's just call it red. Okay, so here's another example. Yeah, and it's changing it. So that gives you much more control over the things that are happening in the different sections. This is what CSS basically is. It's giving you a lot of control over different sections within the HTML. So what we've done is we've picked out this class, this div tag, and given it some style. And there's lots of other things that we could do with it. We've also picked out this divider. That's what div stands for, divider. We've also picked this out and given this some of its own styling. If we pick on P, then everything that has got P in will be styled in that way, which was this section here that we commented out. Okay, so you can see that CSS gives a phenomenal amount of power, and there's so much more you can do with it. I mean, you can change it so that it changes to suit different devices. You know, the layout of your website will change for different devices. You know, the viewport, when your mobile phone's viewport obviously is a lot smaller than your desktop's viewport. And so you may want the style of your website to change to accommodate a smaller screen, and that's why you would use things like add media and give it different code. But I'll get into that in later videos. But for now, the idea is just to make a little basic website and start styling it. So we've got the CSS here. What about if you want to add a photo? What do you do then?